1972, Robert Flaherty, an investor in blue chip stamps, a company Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway had invested in, discovered that the Seas family was selling their business. Buffett said, "I don't want to be in the candy business." A lesser-known friend and advisor to Buffett tried to persuade him that there was great power in Seas brand loyalty. He convinced Buffett, the self-proclaimed cheapskate, to pay a premium for Seas candies. That advisor to Buffett was the late Charlie Munger. That $25 million acquisition has generated over $2 billion in pre-tax profits for their company, Berkshire Hathaway. But that's not the end of the story. Based on what they learned from Seas, in 1988, Berkshire started buying Coca-Cola. That investment is now worth $31 billion and makes them almost $900 million a year in dividends. Then, following that same playbook, they bought Apple in 2016, an investment that made them $100 billion. This demonstrated what's called a mental model. I've used the same mental model to generate $500 million in sales for my own businesses and billions of dollars in sales for other people's businesses. And in this video, you'll learn this exact mental model plus 3 others to rapidly speed up your success. First, what the heck is a mental model? A mental model is just an idea that's been proven time and time again in multiple domains in multiple areas of life to be true. It's really the simplification of a complex topic. You hold these in your head, these mental models, so that you can make smarter decisions faster. And this will become much more clear as we talk about a few of these mental models. So the main mental model I want to talk about first is cloning. At a 2010 Berkshire Hathaway meeting, someone asked, "Hey, I'm looking for your fundamental or unified theory of management and life." Buffett and Munger sat on the stage. Buffett was like, "I don't know if I can take this one. That's too hard." Munger says, "I'll give it a shot." He says it's pragmatism. We've had good enough sense that when something is working well, we just keep doing it. We're demonstrating the fundamental algorithm of life. Repeat what works. That is cloning. And this applies to your own life. If there are things in your life that are getting you good results inside your business, outside your business, keep doing them. For example, being honest, taking care of good people, taking care of your health, working hard, focusing, getting rid of toxic people in your life, attracting more successful people in your life. If you were to look back over the last few years, 5 years even, what has contributed the most to your success? Think about those things. There are likely some of those that you forgot about. You're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. Why did I ever stop doing this?" I hear this all the time. And it also applies, however, to repeating not just what's already worked for you, but what's worked for other people that you can also repeat their steps, which is also called cloning. Sam Walton of Walmart, for example, didn't invent anything. He literally just went around to all these different retail stores, copied everything he liked there, and built Walmart into the massive company it is today. So this one mental model of cloning or repeating what works has accounted for probably 80% of my success. It's literally that powerful. When I first started teaching people how to sell on Amazon, way back in 2012, I started selling on there a few years before then, but when I started teaching people how to sell on Amazon in 2012, the game was so easy because all I did was say, "Hey, look at the products that are already selling well on there and sell those products, but do it a little bit better." That was cloning 101, finding something that's already working and then doing the same thing and ideally a little bit better. And so in that case, you could literally take a top 100 product on Amazon, start selling it, you would absolutely crush it. And then we applied the same model to the course that we created to teach people how to sell on Amazon called Amazing Selling Machine that went on to sell over $100 million and help tens of thousands of people around the world build businesses. I didn't invent the model of how to sell that course. All I did was look at what other people were doing to sell courses. And there was this guy out there called Jeff Walker that created this thing called Product Launch Formula. I went through all this stuff. He had a whole launch model that had worked for him. I modeled and cloned that launch model for Amazing Selling Machine, and we absolutely crushed it. Even my coffee business, the second business I have that has gone into the hundreds of millions of dollars in total sales, that business was cloned. I was reading blog posts by Dave Asprey, and he was talking about healthier coffee with less toxins. And I was like, man, this would be great to be able to sell something like this. Lo and behold, I found somebody, a friend of mine, that had that kind of product, but he wasn't doing a good job of selling it. But I knew that market was there because I saw that it was working for Dave Asprey's content. And so we went and built our own business following that exact same model. And that's how we decided what product to sell. And we made it better. And then even all the marketing we've ever done in that business that has gone to hundreds of millions of dollars in sales has been cloned. I looked at funnels that were working for other people. I modeled them. I looked at ads that were working well for other people. I modeled them. For some reason, we as humans have some aversion to copying what's working, but it's the fastest way to speed up success, and is why cloning is such a powerful mental model. So let's go on to the second mental model, which is incentives. So the reason our program, Amazing Selling Machine, won in that space and generated hundreds of millions of dollars in sales, even though we were not the first online business education program, not even the first Amazon program, was because we offered the right kind of incentives to affiliates. We didn't try to get greedy with them. I know that even today in the influencer game, what people really want that are influencers that have big audiences, they want to make money. They don't want to promote something that's complete garbage. It's going to rip people off. So as long as you're not ripping people off, you're not selling something terrible, they really just want to make the most money possible. How do these celebrities end up getting involved in promoting these cryptocurrency scams? It's because they want to make a lot of money. They just forgot the other part of, hey, let's not promote complete garbage. In our case, we had a very good program that was making people a ton of money. And so we offered affiliates a very generous commission, 50%. In some cases, that meant $2,500 per sale. And we got all the affiliates on the planet, all the big authors, all the big influencers. They all came to promote us because we gave them the right incentives. We applied the same thing with our coffee company. I wanted to go out there and start ranking for stuff in Google. But I was like, this is going to take forever to build these sites and do all the link building and all that kind of stuff. So instead, we just went out there and partnered with the people that already ranked for all these terms, all these blogs, and we just offered them a better commission than anybody else. They were making, a few bucks promoting stuff on Amazon. We would make them as much as $30 per sale. In some cases, that was 15 to 30 times as much as what they were working. So that was demonstrating two mental models. One, the power of incentives, and two, we repeated what works. I saw that this whole affiliate thing worked really well inside of our e-commerce training business, that I applied that same mental model to grow our e-commerce business. Also, if you want to ever remove yourself from having to run any of your businesses, you have to get the incentives right, which is why this is such a powerful mental model. Charlie Munger would say his entire life, he thinks he's done a pretty good job when he was alive, a pretty good job of understanding the power of incentives, yet he always felt like he underestimated its power. And so when it comes to hiring somebody to run your entire business for you, the most important thing for you to get right is the incentives. Are their incentives aligned with what you want to accomplish? Are they going to build the most cash flow possible? Are they going to build the longest term business possible? Which is why typically, whenever I'm paying a CEO, I want to have, and this applies to really any level of employee, but just a little bit different with the CEO, is that I want to make sure they have strong base compensation that can take care of their life. So they're not constantly chasing short-term stuff, like a commission salesperson. That's probably not going to align with what I want, is to build a long-term valuable asset, meaning my business. So I want to make sure that their base compensation is pretty decent. They have some sort of bonus compensation that's tied to the overall profitability of the business. Because at the end of the day, in the long run, every business is worth some multiple of the amount of cash flow or profits that it's generating. So there has to be that happening. And then I want them to think more of like an owner. So I usually want to have some equity-like compensation. So the whole point of all this is to have the right incentives in place. And the last example of this is the whole way to do good marketing, which I've sold a lot now in a wide variety of businesses. So I've learned a few things about marketing. Is one of the most things you have to get right is what's in it for me. The incentives of the person that you're trying to convince to buy or to do anything in life, you have to make sure you really nailed that reason for them to want to sign up, which sounds obvious, but people forget this all the time. They get very excited with their features. They get very excited with their offer. They come up with all kinds of other stuff. But if they just put themselves in the shoes of the person that they're trying to convince to buy this thing and said, what is in it for me? That's what that person's asking. Their marketing would be twice as good. So the next mental model is autocatalysis. So this comes from chemistry. To give you an example, arsine decomposition, the decomposition of arsine produces arsenic, which is then a catalyst for further decomposition. And so the definition of autocatalysis is when the product of a reaction is a catalyst for that reaction. Much simpler way of looking at this, but I want to give you the original source because that's what I think helps people think the most clearly, is a flywheel. We've heard Jeff Bezos and other people talk about flywheels, is where you would see, just as one little thing you just blow, is where one thing leads to the next, which leads to the next, which leads to the next. For example, one way to do marketing and to price products is you price a product high. So when you price a product high, that means you can invest more in marketing, whether it's paying affiliates or whether it's paid ads or whatever. You're making a higher margin per product, which means that you can spend more on marketing. That additional marketing spend creates more sales, which gives you more customers, which gives you more social proof. And now that your product has so much brand recognition and social proof, that allows you to charge an even higher price, or at least maintain that high price, which means you get more marketing, more sales, more customers, more proof, and it keeps going. But that's not the only way. It can actually work the opposite way. On Amazon, for example, one of the ways they built their business, and this is one of the low price flywheels that Jeff Bezos talked about, by having a low price, such as Amazon, Walmart, Costco, you get more customers. You get a higher volume of customers. And because you're getting a higher volume of customers, you're selling a higher volume of products, which allows you to buy those products at a discount and be able to sell them at an even lower price. Lower price leads to more customers, which means the more bulk buying, and it just keeps going like that. So there's so much power in this idea of autocatalysis or flywheels. And so the lesson for you is to always be thinking about your business in terms of flywheels. How can you create one in your business? Where do these exist in your business or in other people's businesses? And how can you incorporate them in yours? This will give you a much smarter idea in terms of the strategies of ways to grow and scale your business. Finally, the last mental model we're going to discuss today is what's called surfing. And so early on, when I first started teaching people how to sell on Amazon, that business was only going one direction. It was very early. Most people were doing a terrible job of marketing on there, basically not doing any marketing at all, which made it so easy. But there were big tailwinds behind this business. There was the tailwind of Amazon growing like crazy. There was also the tailwind of e-commerce itself in general growing like crazy. The overall economy was growing. So there was all these pressures happening behind you when jumping in that business that allowed you to surf on this wave for a very long time. Same thing happens in a lot of technology companies. We see it right now with AI. You saw it at some point with Bitcoin and then it kind of fell off. Is that for a period of time in a lot of these technologies is that these companies do so well because they get on the wave early and they're able to just ride this force that's just pushing them behind themselves. I went the other day to a biohacking conference, and it was absolutely crazy. People are jumping up and down. It's jam-packed, wall to wall. That space right now, because people are getting older, because there's new and exciting technologies in that space, because people have been talking about it forever, because there's podcasters like Huberman, is that whole space is in a big wave right now. And so whenever you can find these sort of waves, it makes your life so much easier, which is why whether you want to go work for another company, there's been so many people that have, never even started a business or started one much later, but they did very well in their careers just because they got into the right company in the right market at the right time. So whether you're just looking for a job or whether you're looking to start a business or pivot your business, you want to look for growing markets because you're able to surf that for a long period of time. You'll put in the same time and effort as you would in a non-growing market, but you're going to get 10 times the results. And so this is what I see a lot of time with people, especially with entrepreneurs that have been in business for a while. They kind of stagnate because they may have a product that was doing well at some point, but it's not really growing at all. So they're putting in all the time and effort, but they're getting a fraction out of it what they could if they really just lifted their head up and looked, am I on the right wave? Am I on any wave at all? Is it big enough? Can I keep pushing this thing while I'm also getting this invisible force behind me? So this concept of surfing is super powerful. Always be looking for those opportunities because that's where the outsized returns come from. And a big warning lesson from here is don't get off the wave. If you find yourself on one of these, do not get off because as in surfing, once you get knocked off the wave, it's a pain in the butt to get back on. I've surfed 10 times or so, and especially if the waves are decent size, you're just getting tumbled underwater. Then sometimes, depending on how the waves are structured, you may have to swim straight back through all the waves, just getting pummeled all the way. And so your lesson here is do not get off the wave if you find yourself on one. Doesn't matter if you get bored, doesn't matter if you get disinterested, doesn't matter if you see some other people getting ahead faster than you. If you're in a fortunate position to find yourself on a great wave in life, do not get off. Ride it until it dies. Ride it until the very last minute while the getting is good. And so for more mental models, subscribe to my channel and newsletter below 100% for free. I incorporate all these in my content, and I'm studying around 100 of these. I've already documented around 30 plus of these. So you'll find a lot of these in my future videos and email newsletters that I send out every week for free. So subscribe below.